Well, welcome back to U.S. Farm Report, SDSU. This weekend, Hobo Day. We are excited to be here. School spirit is really at a level 10 this week, and we're excited to showcase that. A great group here from South Dakota State University just to talk about the latest that's happening in agriculture, including a big USDA report this week. October report was out on Thursday. This thought that, some thought we would see a cut in yield. Some thought we maybe see soybean yields go up a little bit. But at the end of the day, what did we see USDA do?
So in the October report, USDA lowered corn yields from 173.8 to 173. The effect of that was obviously production's reduced, but at the same time, they reduced exports and they reduced some other aspects of demand. And so all in all, even though production was decreased quite a bit, the ending stocks level was only decreased 100 million bushels. And so we're still looking at that 15% stocks to use ratio, which would suggest prices would be pretty much where they're trading right now, around that $4.80, maybe $5 mark.
So you don't think we're going to see much movement when it comes to corn and bean prices specifically?
To corn prices, no. And the bean yield was reduced as well. And then they did some different things with the demand side on that in order to keep the stocks to use level basically the same there. And so prices for soybeans would generally maybe try to stick around that $12.50, $13 mark, but we might see possibilities of $14 corn or soybeans in the future if we could see demand pick up in some other aspects and we could reduce that 220 million ending stocks down to below that into the 100 million area of stocks, ending stocks available for next year.
Well, you go back to this summer. The weather was less than ideal. I mean, we have been impressed with some of these yields this year, despite all of the challenges that we saw from Mother Nature. But, Sarah, when you look at the big picture of things, does higher yield actually equate to higher returns for farmers?
That's a great question and something I've been working on throughout my dissertation research, and especially now that I'm an assistant professor. We've been working on a project with nitrogen management, challenging farmers to think more about this. So I just finished my PhD at the University of Illinois, and during that time I was involved in a project with my advisor, Dr. Gary Schnitke, the Illinois Corn Growers, and the Illinois Soybean Association. And what we found was that farmers who were following the university nitrogen, who were applying nitrogen above the university nitrogen recommendation may have been having higher yields, yes, but they were not necessarily having higher returns than those who were applying at the university nitrogen recommendation. So I think shifting that mindset, thinking about profit maximization versus yield maximization is very important for farmers.
Well, it's a mindset shift that we're going to have to see, especially as we look at higher interest rates. And Joe, when you look at this week, some discussions from the Fed, are we going to see another interest rate hike? What's your thoughts at this point?
Yeah, so the Fed's primary goal is to get inflation back to 2%. And that's not where it is. As of Thursday morning, we learned that the consumer price index remained somewhat elevated. Their goal is 2%, and we're working between 3.7 and 4%, depending on how you measure it. So the only tool the Federal Reserve really has to combat this higher inflation is to raise interest rates. And they've been doing so, as everyone knows, very aggressively. But not only have they been increasing interest rates, but the market has been increasing interest rates. So bond yields have been rising as well. And in some ways, I think the attention on the Fed as to whether or not they will raise again is somewhat misplaced. The bond markets are bigger, and the bond markets are determining all on their own that interest rates need to be higher. So I think that path or that trend is going to continue, and we can talk more about this, but I'm in the camp of higher for longer.
And it seems like that is what we're going to see. So what are some of those impacts if we do have these higher for longer interest rates?
Yeah, so what the central bank is fundamentally doing is controlling demand. The central bank can't create increases in productivity or do anything to the supply side of the economy. All they have is this interest rate lever. And when they raise that interest rate, they are changing the math, if you will, on investment opportunities, on consumption opportunities, and raising those rates reduces the tendency for firms to invest, for consumers to purchase, and so on. So it will slow economic activity. And that's what everyone is really now thinking about. At what point do these increases in interest rates, these sustained increases in interest rates, actually work to slow labor markets and economic activity more generally. And that's an open question.
Well, we need to talk a little bit more about demand when it comes to soybeans, renewable diesel. We'll get in that discussion, cover crops. We have a lot more to talk about. But first, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with much more U.S. Farm Report.